Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome in, welcome in. How are we doing tonight? It's good to see everybody. Hello, hello. Alright, so tonight we are going to be reading more Arsène Lupin versus Herlock Sholmes. We've got part 3 of the story to read through today, which is going to be chapters 5 and 6. As you can see, I've added a couple of things to these reading streams. Now I've got at least a bit of a book cover, so that way anybody who's coming in can know the story that I'm reading. And I've also added a cute little waveform thing for the background music. Hope you guys like it. Alright, let's get started with Chapter 5. Chapter 5, An Abduction. Herlock Sholmes said nothing. To protest? To accuse the two men? That would be useless. In the absence of evidence which he did not possess and had no time to seek, no one would believe him. Moreover, he was stifled with rage, but would not display his feelings before the triumphant Ganimard. So he bowed respectfully to the brothers Leroux, guardians of society, and retired. In the vestibule, he turned toward a low door which looked like the entrance to a cellar, and picked up a small red stone. It was a garnet. When he reached the street, he turned and read on the front of the house this inscription: Lucien Destang, architect, 1877. The adjoining house, number 42, bore the same inscription. Always the double passage. Numbers 40 and 42 have a secret means of communication. Why didn't I think of that? I should have remained with the two policemen. He met the policemen near the corner and said to them, "Two people came out of house 42 during my absence, didn't they?" "Yes, a gentleman and lady." Ganimard approached. Sholmes took his arm, and as they walked down the street he said, "Monsieur Ganimard, You have had a good laugh, and will no doubt forgive me for the trouble I have caused you. Oh, there's no harm done, but it was a good joke. I admit that, but the best jokes have only a short life, and this one can't last much longer. I hope not. This is now the 7th day, and I can remain only 3 days more. Then I must return to London. Oh. I wish to ask you to be in readiness, as I may call on you at any hour on Tuesday or Wednesday night. For an expedition of the same kind as we had tonight? Yes, monsieur, the very same. With what result? The capture of Arsène Lupin, replied Sholmes. Do you think so? I swear it, on my honor, monsieur. Sholmes bade Ganimard goodbye and went to the nearest hotel for a few hours' sleep, after which, refreshed and with renewed confidence in himself, he returned to the Rue Chagrin, slipped 2 louis into the hand of the concierge, assured himself that the brothers Leroux had gone out, learned that the house belonged to a Monsieur Harminget, and, provided with a candle, descended to the cellar through the low door near which he had found the garnet. At the bottom of the stairs he found another exactly like it. I am not mistaken, he thought. This is the means of communication. Let me see if my skeleton key will open the cellar reserved for the tenant of the ground floor. Yes, it will. Now I will examine those cases of wine. Oh. Here are some places where the dust has been cleared away, and some footprints on the ground. A slight noise caused him to listen attentively. Quickly he pushed the door shut, blew out his candle, and hid behind a pile of empty wine cases. After a few seconds, he noticed that a portion of the wall swung on a pivot. The light of a lantern was thrown into the cellar. An arm appeared. Then a man entered. He was bent over as if he was searching for something. He felt in the dust with his fingers, and several times he threw something into a cardboard box that he carried in his left hand. Afterward, he obliterated the traces of his footsteps, as well as the footsteps left by Lupin and the blonde lady. And he was about to leave the cellar by the same way as he had entered, when he uttered a harsh cry and fell to the ground. Sholmes had leapt upon him. It was the work of a moment, and in the simplest manner in the world the man found himself stretched on the ground, bound and handcuffed. The Englishman leaned over him and said, "Have you anything to say? To tell what you know?" The man replied by such an ironical smile that Sholmes realized the futility of questioning him. So he contented himself by exploring the pockets of his captive, but he found only a bunch of keys, a handkerchief, and the small cardboard box which contained a dozen garnets similar to those which Sholmes had found. Then what was he to do with this man? Wait until his friends came to his help and deliver all of them to the police? What good would that do? What advantage would that give him over Lupin? He hesitated, but an examination of the box decided the question. The box bore this name and address: Leonard, jeweler, Rue de la Paix. He resolved to abandon the man to his fate. He locked the cellar and left the house. At a branch post office, he sent a telegram to Monsieur d'Estaing, saying that he could not come that day. Then he went to see the jeweler, and handing him the garnets, said, "Madame sent me with these stones. She wishes to have them reset." Sholmes had struck the right key. The jeweler replied, "Certainly. The lady telephoned to me. She said she would be here today." Sholmes established himself on the sidewalk to wait for the lady, but it was 5 o'clock when he saw a heavily veiled lady approach and enter the store. Through the window, he saw her place on the counter a piece of antique jewelry set with garnets. She went away almost immediately, walking quickly and passed through streets that were unknown to the Englishman. As it was now almost dark, he walked close behind her and followed her into a 5-story house of double flats, and therefore occupied by numerous tenants. At the second floor, she stopped and entered. 2 minutes later, the Englishman commenced to try the keys on the bunch he had taken from the man in the Rue Chagrin. The 4th key fitted the lock. Notwithstanding the darkness of the rooms, he perceived that they were absolutely empty, as if unoccupied, and the various doors were standing open so that he could see all the apartments. At the end of a corridor, he perceived a ray of light, and by approaching on tiptoe and looking through the glass door, he saw the veiled lady who had removed her hat and dress and was now wearing a velvet dressing gown. The discarded garments were lying on the only chair in the room, and a lighted lamp stood on the mantel. Then he saw her approach the fireplace and press what appeared to be the button of an electric bell. Immediately, the panel to the right of the fireplace moved and slowly glided behind the adjoining panel, thus disclosing an opening large enough for a person to pass through. The lady disappeared through this opening, taking the lamp with her. The operation was a very simple one. Sholmes adopted it and followed the lady. He found himself in total darkness, and immediately he felt his face brushed by some soft articles. He lighted a match and found that he was in a very small room, completely filled with cloaks and dresses suspended on hangers. He picked his way through until he reached a door that was draped with a portiere. He peeped through, and behold, the blonde lady was there, under his eyes and almost within reach of his hand. She extinguished the lamp and turned on the electric lights. Then, for the first time, Herlock Sholmes attained a good look at her face. He was amazed. The woman, whom he had overtaken after so much trouble and after so many tricks and maneuvers, was none other than Clotilde D'Estaing. Clotilde D'Estaing, the assassin of the Baron de Hautrec and the thief who stole the blue diamond. Clotilde D'Estaing, the mysterious friend of Arsène Lupin and the blonde lady. Yes, I am only a stupid ass, thought Herlock Sholmes at that moment. Because Lupin's friend was a blonde and Clotilde is a brunette, I never dreamed that they were the same person. But how could the blonde lady remain a blonde after the murder of the Baron and the theft of the diamond? Sholmes could see a portion of the room. It was a boudoir, furnished with the most delightful luxury and exquisite taste, and adorned with beautiful tapestries and costly ornaments. A mahogany couch, upholstered in silk, was located on the side of the room opposite the door at which Sholmes was standing. Clotilde was sitting on this couch, motionless, her face covered by her hands. Then he perceived that she was weeping. Great tears rolled down her pale cheeks and fell, drop by drop, onto the velvet corsage. The tears came thick and fast, as if their source were inexhaustible. A door silently opened behind her, and Arsène Lupin entered. He looked at her for a long time without making his presence known. Then he approached her, knelt at her feet, pressed her head to his breast, folded her into his arms, and his actions indicated an infinite measure of love and sympathy. For a time, not a word was uttered, but her tears became less abundant. I was so anxious to make you happy, he murmured. I am happy. No, you are crying. Your tears break my heart, Clotilde. The caressing and sympathetic tone of his voice soothed her, and she listened to him with an eager desire for hope and happiness. Her features were softened by a smile, and yet how sad a smile. He continued to speak in a tone of tender entreaty. You should not be unhappy, Clotilde. You have no cause to be. She displayed her delicate white hands and said solemnly, Yes, Maxime. So long as I see those hands, I shall be sad. Why? They are stained with blood. Hush, do not think of that, exclaimed Lupin. The dead is past and gone. Do not resurrect it. And he kissed the long, delicate hand, while she regarded him with a brighter smile as if each kiss effaced a portion of that dreadful memory. You must love me, Maxime, you must, because no woman will ever love you as I do. For your sake I have done many things, not at your order or request, but in obedience to your secret desires. I have done things at which my will and conscience revolted, but there was some unknown power that I could not resist. What I did involuntarily, mechanically, because it helped you, because you wished it. And I am ready to do it again tomorrow, and always. Ah, Clotilde, he said bitterly, why did I draw you into my adventurous life? I should have remained the Maxime Bermond that you loved 5 years ago, and not have let you know the other man that I am. She replied in a low voice, I love the other man also, and I have nothing to regret. Yes, you regret your past life, the free and happy life you once enjoyed. I have no regrets when you are here, she said passionately. All faults and crimes disappear when I see you. When you are away, I may suffer and weep, and be horrified at what I have done, but when you come, it is all forgotten. Your love wipes it all away, and I am happy again. But you must love me. I do not love you on compulsion, Clotilde. I love you simply because I love you. Are you sure of it? I am just as sure of my own love as I am of yours. Only my life is a very active and exciting one, and I cannot spend as much time with you as I would like, just now. What is it? Some new danger? Tell me. Oh, nothing serious. Only what? She asked. Well, he is on our track. Who? Herlock Sholmes? Yes. It was he who dragged Ganimard into that affair at the Hungarian restaurant. It was he who instructed the 2 policemen to watch the house in the Rue Chagrin. I have proof of it. Ganimard searched the house this morning and Sholmes was with him. Besides? What? Well, there is another thing. One of our men is missing. Who? Gignac. The concierge? Yes. Why, I sent him to the Rue Chagrin this morning to pick up the garnets that fell out of my brooch. There is no doubt, then, that Sholmes caught him. No, the garnets were delivered to the jeweler in the Rue de la Paix. Then what has become of him? Oh, Maxime, I am afraid. There is nothing to be afraid of, but I confess the situation is very serious. What does he know? Where does he hide himself? His isolation is his strong card. I cannot reach him. What are you going to do? Act with extreme prudence, Clotilde. Some time ago I decided to change my residence to a safer place, and Sholmes' appearance on the scene has prompted me to do so at once. When a man like that is on your track, you must be prepared for the worst. Well, I am making my preparations. Day after tomorrow, Wednesday, I shall move. At noon it will be finished. At 2 o'clock I shall leave the place after removing the last trace of our residence there, which will be no small matter. Until then... Well? Until then, we must not see each other, and no one must see you, Clotilde. Do not go out. I have no fear for myself, but I have for you.
That Englishman cannot possibly reach me.
I'm not so sure of that. He is a dangerous man. Yesterday I came here to search the cupboard that contains all of Monsieur D'Estaing's old papers and records. There's danger here. There's danger everywhere. I feel that he is watching us, that he is drawing his net around us closer and closer. It is one of those intuitions which never deceive me.
In that case, Maxime, go, and think no more of my tears. I shall be brave, and wait patiently until the danger is past. Adieu, Maxime.
They held one another for some time in a last fond embrace, and it was she that gently pushed him outside. Sholmes could hear the sound of their voices in the distance. Emboldened by the necessities of the situation and the urgent need of bringing his investigation to a speedy termination, Sholmes proceeded to make an examination of the house in which he now found himself. He passed through Clotilde's boudoir, into a corridor at the end of which there was a stairway leading to the lower floor. He was about to descend the stairway when he heard voices below, which caused him to change his route. He followed the corridor, which was a circular one, and discovered another stairway, which he descended and found himself amidst surroundings that bore a familiar appearance. He passed through a door that stood partly open and entered a large circular room. It was Monsieur D'Estaing's library. "Ah, splendid!" he exclaimed. "Now I understand everything. The boudoir of Mademoiselle Clotilde, the blonde lady, communicates with a room in the adjoining house. And that house does not front on the Place Malesherbes, but upon an adjacent street, the Rue Montchanin, if I remember the name correctly. And now I understand how Clotilde D'Estaing can meet her lover and at the same time create the impression that she never leaves the house. And I understand also how Arsène Lupin was enabled to make his mysterious entrance to the gallery last night. Ah, there must be another connection between the library and the adjoining room. One more house full of ways that are dark, and no doubt Lucien D'Estaing was the architect as usual. I shall take advantage of this opportunity to examine the contents of the cupboard and perhaps learn the location of other houses with secret passages constructed by Monsieur D'Estaing." Sholmes ascended to the gallery and concealed himself behind some draperies, where he remained until late in the evening. At last, a servant came and turned off the electric lights. An hour later, the Englishman, by the light of his lantern, made his way to the cupboard. As he had surmised, it contained the architect's old papers, plans, specifications, and books of account. It also contained a series of registers arranged according to date, and Sholmes, having selected those of the most recent dates, searched in the indexes for the name Harminget. He found it in one of the registers with a reference to page 63. Turning to that page, he read, Harminget, 40 Rue Chagrin. This was followed by a detailed account of the work done in and about the installation of a furnace in the house. And in the margin of the book, someone had written these words, "See account M.B." "Ah, I thought so," said Sholmes. "The account M.B. is the one I want. I shall learn from it the actual residence of Monsieur Lupin." It was morning before he found that important account. It comprised 16 pages, one of which was a copy of the page on which was described the work done for Monsieur Harminget of the Rue Chagrin. Another page described the work performed for Monsieur Vatinel, as owner of the house at number 25 Rue Clapeyron. Another page was reserved for the Baron de Hautrec, 134 Avenue Henri Martin. Another was devoted to the Chateau de Crozon, and the 11 other pages to various owners of houses in Paris. Sholmes made a list of those 11 names and addresses, after which he returned the books to their proper places, opened a window, jumped out into the deserted street, and closed the shutters behind him. When he reached his room at the hotel, he lighted his pipe with all the solemnity with which he was wont to characterize the act, and amidst clouds of smoke he studied the deductions that might be drawn from the account of M.B., or rather, from the account of Maxime Bermond, alias Arsène Lupin. At 8 o'clock, he sent the following message to Ganimard. I expect to pass through the Rue Pergles this forenoon, and will inform you of a person whose arrest is of the highest importance. In any event, be at home tonight and tomorrow until noon, and have at least 30 men at your service. Then he engaged an automobile at the stand on the boulevard, choosing one whose chauffeur looked good-natured but dull-witted, and instructed him to drive to the Place Malesherbes, where he stopped him about 100 feet from Monsieur D'Estaing's house. My boy, close your carriage, he said to the chauffeur. Turn up the collar of your coat, for the wind is cold, and wait patiently. At the end of an hour and a half, crank up your machine. When I return, we will go to the Rue Pergolese. As he was ascending the steps leading to the door, a doubt entered his mind. Was it not a mistake on his part to be spending his time on the affairs of the blonde lady, while Arsène Lupin was preparing to move? Would he be not better engaged in trying to find the abode of his adversary amongst the 11 houses on his list? Ah, he exclaimed, when the blonde lady becomes my prisoner, I shall be master of the situation. And he rang the bell. Monsieur D'Estaing was already in the library. They had been working only a few minutes when Clotilde entered, bade her father good morning, entered the adjoining parlor, and sat down to write. From his place, Sholmes could see her leaning over the table and from time to time absorbed in deep meditation. After a short time, he picked up a book and said to Monsieur D'Estaing, Here is a book that Mademoiselle D'Estaing asked me to bring her when I found it. He went into the little parlor, stood before Clotilde in such a manner that her father could not see her, and said, I am Monsieur Stickman, your father's new secretary.
Ah, said Clotilde without moving. My father has changed his secretary. I didn't know it.
Yes, mademoiselle, and I desire to speak with you.
Kindly take a seat, monsieur. I have finished.
She added a few words to her letter, signed it, enclosed it in the envelope, sealed it, pushed her writing material away, rang the telephone, got in communication with her dressmaker, asked the latter to hasten the completion of a traveling dress, as she required it at once, and then, turning to Sholmes, she said,
I am at your service, monsieur, but do you wish to speak before my father? Would not that be better?
No, mademoiselle, and I beg of you, do not raise your voice. It is better that Monsieur D'Estaing should not hear us.
For whose sake is it better?
Yours, mademoiselle.
I cannot agree to hold any conversation with you that my father may not hear.
But you must agree to this. It is imperative. Both of them arose, eye to eye. She said, Speak, monsieur. Still standing, he commenced. You will be so good as to pardon me if I am mistaken on certain points of secondary importance. I will guarantee, however, the general accuracy of my statements.
Can we not dispense with these preliminaries, monsieur? Or are they necessary?
Sholmes felt the young woman was on her guard, so he replied, Very well, I will come to the point. 5 years ago, your father made the acquaintance of a certain young man called Maxime Bermond, who was introduced as a contractor or an architect. I am not sure which it was, but it was one or the other. Monsieur D'Estaing was took a liking to the young man, and as the state of his health compelled him to retire from active business, he entrusted to Monsieur Beaumont the execution of certain orders he had received from some of his old customers, and which seemed to come within the scope of Monsieur Beaumont's ability. Herlock Sholmes stopped. It seemed to him that the girl's pallor had increased. Yet there was not the slightest tremor in her voice when she said,
I know nothing about the circumstances to which you refer, monsieur, and I do not see in what way they can interest me.
In this way, mademoiselle, you know as well as I that Maxime Beaumont is also known by the name of Arsène Lupin.
She laughed and said, Nonsense! Arsène Lupin! Maxime Beaumont is Arsène Lupin! Oh, no, it isn't possible.
I have the honor to inform you of that fact, and that since you refuse to understand my meaning, I will add that Arsène Lupin has found in this house a friend, more than a friend, and accomplice, blindly and passionately devoted to him. Without emotion, or at least with so little emotion that Sholmes was astonished at her self-control, she declared, I do not understand your object, monsieur, and I do not care to, but I command you to say no more and leave this house. I have no intention of forcing my presence on you, replied Sholmes with equal sang-froid, but I shall not leave this house alone.
And who will accompany you, monsieur?
You will.
I?
Yes, mademoiselle. We will leave this house together, and you will follow me without one word of protest. The strange feature of the foregoing interview was the absolute coolness of the two adversaries. It bore no resemblance to an implacable duel between two powerful wills, but judging solely from their attitude and the tone of their voices, an onlooker would have supposed their conversation to be nothing more serious than a courteous argument over some impersonal subject. Clotilde resumed her seat without deigning to reply to the last remark of Herlock Sholmes, except by a shrug of her shoulders. Sholmes looked at his watch and said, It is 10:30. We will leave here in 5 minutes.
Perhaps.
If not, I shall go to Monsieur d'Estaing and tell him
what?
The truth. I will tell him of the vicious life of Maxime Beaumont, and I will tell him of the double life of his accomplice.
Of his accomplice?
Yes, of the woman known as the Blonde Lady, of the woman who was blonde.
What proofs will you give him?
I will take him to the Rue Chagrin, and show him the secret passage made by Arsène Lupin's workmen, while doing the work of which he had the control, between the houses numbered 40 and 42, the passage which you and he used 2 nights ago.
Well,
I will then take Monsieur d'Estaing to the house of Monsieur d'Etanin. We will descend the servants' stairway, which was used by you and Arsène Lupin when you escaped from Ganimard, and we will search together the means of communication with the adjoining house, which fronts on the Boulevard des Batignolles, not upon the Rue Clapeyron.
Well,
I will take Monsieur d'Estaing to the Chateau de Crozon, and it will be easy for him, who knows the nature of the work performed by Arsène Lupin in the restoration of the chateau, to discover the secret passages constructed there by his workmen. It will thus be established that those passages allowed the blonde lady to make a nocturnal visit to the Countess's room and take the blue diamond from the mantel, and 2 weeks later, by similar means, to enter the room of Herr Bleichen and conceal the blue diamond in his tooth powder. A strange action, I confess. A woman's revenge, perhaps, but I don't know and I don't care.
Well,
after that, said Herlock Sholmes in a more serious tone, I will take Monsieur d'Estaing to 134 Avenue Henri Martin, and we will learn how the Baron de Hautrec
No, no, keep quiet, stammered the girl, struck with a sudden terror. I forbid you. You dare to say that it was I? You accuse me?
I accuse you of having killed the Baron de Hautrec.
No, no, it is a lie.
You killed the Baron de Hautrec, mademoiselle. You entered his service under the name of Antoinette Brehart for the purpose of stealing the blue diamond, and you killed him.
Keep quiet, monsieur,
she implored him.
Since you know so much, you must know that I did not murder the Baron.
I did not say that you murdered him, mademoiselle. Baron d'Hautrec was subject to fits of insanity that only Sister Auguste could control. She told me so herself. In her absence, he must have attacked you, and in the course of the struggle, you struck him in order to save your own life. Frightened at your awful situation, you rang the bell and fled without even taking the blue diamond from the finger of your victim. A few minutes later, you returned with one of Arsène Lupin's accomplices, who was a servant in the adjoining house. You placed the Baron on the bed, you put the room in order, but you were afraid to take the blue diamond. Now, I have told you what happened on that night. I repeat, you did not murder the Baron, and yet it was your hand that struck the blow. She had crossed them over her forehead, those long, delicate white hands, and kept them thus for a long time. At last, loosing her fingers, she said in a voice rent by anguish,
And do you intend to tell all that to my father?
Yes, and I will tell him that I have secured as witnesses Mademoiselle Gerbois, who will recognize the blonde lady, Sister Auguste, who will recognize Antoinette Brehart, and the Countess de Crozon, who will recognize Madame de Rayo. That is what I shall tell him.
You will not dare,
she said, recovering her self-possession in the face of an immediate peril. He arose and made a step toward the library. Clotilde stopped him.
One moment, monsieur.
She paused, reflected a moment, and then, perfect mistress of herself, said,
You are Herlock Sholmes.
Yes.
What do you want of me?
What do I want? I am fighting a duel with Arsène Lupin, and I must win. The contest is now drawing to a climax, and I have an idea that a hostage as precious as you will give me an important advantage over my adversary. Therefore, you will follow me, mademoiselle. I will entrust you to one of my friends. As soon as the duel is ended, you will be set at liberty.
Is that all?
That is all. I do not belong to the police service of this country, and consequently I do not consider that I am under any obligation to cause your arrest. She appeared to have come to a decision, yet she required a momentary respite. She closed her eyes the better to concentrate her thoughts. Sholmes looked at her in surprise. She was now so tranquil and apparently indifferent to the dangers which threatened her. Sholmes thought, does she believe that she is in danger? Probably not, since Lupin protects her. She has confidence in him. She believes that Lupin is omnipotent and infallible. Mademoiselle, he said, I told you that we would leave here in 5 minutes. That time has almost expired.
Will you permit me to go to my room, monsieur, to get some necessary articles?
Certainly, mademoiselle, and I will wait for you in the Rue Montchanet. Génial, the concierge, is a friend of mine.
You know?
She said, visibly alarmed. I know many things.
Very well. I will ring for the maid.
The maid brought her hat and jacket, then Sholmes said, You must give Monsieur d'Estaing some reason for our departure, and if possible, let your excuse serve for an absence of several days.
That shall not be necessary. I shall be back very soon.
They exchanged defiant glances and an ironic smile. What faith you have in him, said Sholmes.
absolute.
He does everything well, doesn't he? He succeeds in everything he undertakes, and whatever he does receives your approval and cooperation.
I love him,
She said with a touch of passion in her voice.
and you think that he will save you?
She shrugged her shoulders, and approaching her father, she said,
I am going to deprive you of Monsieur Stickman. We are going to the National Library.
You will return for luncheon?
Perhaps. No, I think not. But don't be uneasy.
Then she said to Sholmes in a firm voice,
I am at your service, monsieur.
Absolutely.
Quite so.
I warn you that if you attempt to escape, I shall call the police and have you arrested. Do not forget that the blonde lady is on parole.
I give you my word of honor that I shall not attempt to escape.
I believe you. Now, let us go. They left the house together as he had predicted. The automobile was standing where Sholmes had left it. As they approached it, Sholmes could hear the rumbling of the motor. He opened the door, asked Clotilde to enter, and took a seat beside her. The machine started at once, gained the exterior boulevards, the Avenue Hoche and the Avenue de la Grande Armée. Sholmes was considering his plans. He thought, Ganimard is at home. I will leave the girl in his care. Shall I tell him who she is? No, he would take her to prison at once, and that would spoil everything. When I am alone, I can consult my list of addresses taken from the account MB and run them down. Tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest, I shall go to Ganimard, as I agreed, and deliver into his hands Arsène Lupin and all his band. He rubbed his hand gleefully at the thought that this duel with Lupin was drawing to a close, and he could not see any serious obstacle in the way of his success. And yielding to an irrepressible desire to give vent to his feelings, an unusual desire on his part, he exclaimed, Excuse me, mademoiselle, if I am unable to conceal my satisfaction and delight. The battle has been a difficult one, and my successes, therefore, more enjoyable.
A legitimate success, monsieur, of which you have a just right to be proud.
Thank you. But where are we going? The chauffeur must have misunderstood my directions. At that moment they were leaving Paris by the Gate de Neuilly. That was strange, as the Rue Pergolese is not outside the fortifications. Sholmes lowered the glass and said, Chauffeur, you have made a mistake. Rue Pergolese. The man made no reply. Sholmes repeated in a louder voice, I told you to go to the Rue Pergolese. Still the man did not reply. Ah, but you are deaf, my friend. Or is he doing it on purpose? We're very much out of our way. Rue Pergolese, turn back at once. Rue Pergolese. The chauffeur made no sign of having heard the order. The Englishman fretted with impatience. He looked at Clotilde. A mysterious smile played upon her lips. Why do you laugh? He said. It is an awkward mistake, but it won't help you.
Of course not,
she replied. Then an idea occurred to him. He rose and made a careful scrutiny of the chauffeur. His shoulders were not so broad, his bearing was not so stiff and mechanical. A cold perspiration covered his forehead, and his hands clenched with sudden fear, as his mind was seized with the conviction that the chauffeur was Arsène Lupin. Well, Monsieur Sholmes, what do you think of our little ride? Delightful, monsieur. Really delightful, replied Sholmes. Never in his life had he experienced so much difficulty in uttering a few simple words without a tremor or without betraying his feelings in his voice. But quickly, by a sort of reaction, a flood of hatred and rage burst its bounds, overcame his self-control, and brusquely drawing his revolver, he pointed it at Mademoiselle D'Estaing. Lupin, stop this minute, this second, or I fire at Mademoiselle. I advise you to aim at the cheek if you wish to hit the temple, replied Lupin, without turning his head.
Maxime, don't go so fast, said Clotilde. The pavement is slippery, and I'm very timid.
She was smiling. Her eyes were fixed on the pavement over which the carriage was traveling at enormous speed. Let him stop. Let him stop, said Sholmes to her, wild with rage. I warn you that I am desperate. The barrel of the revolver brushed the waving locks of her hair. She replied calmly,
Maxime is so imprudent. He is going so fast. I am really afraid of some accident.
Sholmes returned the weapon to his pocket and seized the handle of the door as if to alight, despite the absurdity of such an act.
Clotilde said to him, Be careful, monsieur. There is an automobile behind us.
He leaned over. There was an automobile close behind, a large machine of formidable aspect with its sharp prow and blood-red body, and holding 4 men clad in fur coats. Ah, I am well guarded, thought Sholmes. I may as well be patient. He folded his arms across his chest with that proud air of submission so frequently assumed by heroes when fate has turned against them. And while they crossed the river Seine and rushed through Sérènes, Rouen, and Chateau, motionless and resigned, controlling his actions and his passions, he tried to explain to his own satisfaction by what miracle Arsène Lupin had substituted himself for the chauffeur. It was quite improbable that the honest-looking fellow he had selected on the boulevard that morning was an accomplice placed there in advance. And yet, Arsène Lupin had received a warning in some way, and it must have been after he, Sholmes, had approached Clotilde in the house, because no one could have suspected his project prior to that time. Since then, Sholmes had not allowed Clotilde out of his sight. Then an idea struck him. The telephone communication desired by Clotilde and her conversation with the dressmaker. Now it was all quite clear to him. Even before he had spoken to her, simply upon his request to speak to her as the new secretary of Monsieur D'Estaing, she had scented the danger, surmised the name and purpose of the visitor, and calmly, naturally, as if she were performing a commonplace action of her everyday life, she had called Arsène Lupin to her assistance by some preconcerted signal. How Arsène Lupin had come and caused himself to be substituted for the chauffeur were matters of trifling importance. That which affected Sholmes, even to the point of appeasing his fury, was the recollection of that incident whereby an ordinary woman, a sweetheart it is true, mastering her nerves, controlling her features, and subjugating the expression of her eyes, had completely deceived the astute detective Herlock Sholmes. How difficult to overcome an adversary who is aided by such confederates, and who, by the mere force of his authority, inspires in a woman so much courage and strength. They had crossed the Seine and climbed the hill at Saint-Germain, but some 500 meters beyond that town, the automobile slackened its speed. The other automobile advanced, and the two stopped side by side. There was no one else in the neighborhood. Monsieur Sholmes, said Lupin, kindly exchange to the other machine. Ours is really a very slow one. Indeed, said Sholmes, calmly, convinced that he had no choice. And permit me to loan you a fur coat, as we will travel quite fast, and the air is cool. And accept a couple of sandwiches, as we cannot tell when we will dine. The four men alighted from the other automobile. One of them approached, and as he raised his goggles, Sholmes recognized in him the gentleman in the frock coat that he had seen at the Hungarian restaurant. Lupin said to him, "You will return this machine to the chauffeur from whom I hired it. He's waiting in the first wine shop to the right as you go up the Rue Legendre. You will give him the balance of the 1,000 francs I promised him. Yes, kindly give me your goggles to Monsieur Sholmes." He talked to Mademoiselle D'Estaing for a moment, then took his place at the wheel and started, with Sholmes at his side and one of his men behind him. Lupin had not exaggerated when he said we will travel quite fast. From the beginning, he set a breakneck pace. The horizon rushed to meet them as if attracted by some mysterious force and disappeared instantly as though swallowed up in an abyss, into which many other things, such as trees, houses, fields, and forests, were hurled with tumultuous fury and haste of a torrent as it approached the cataract. Sholmes and Lupin did not exchange a word. Above their heads, the leaves of the poplars made a great noise like the waves of the sea, rhythmically arranged by the regular spacing of the trees, and the town swept by like specters. Menteo, Vernon, Gaillon, from one hill to the other, from Bon-Secours to Canteleu, Rouen, its suburbs, its harbor, its miles of wharves, Rouen seemed like the straggling street of a country village. And this was Duclair, Claudebec, the country of Caux, which they skimmed over in their terrific flight, and Lillebonne and Quillebeuf. Then suddenly they found themselves on the banks of the Seine, at the extremity of a little wharf, beside which lay a staunch sea-going yacht that emitted great volumes of black smoke from its funnel. The automobile stopped. In 2 hours they had traveled over 40 leagues. A man wearing a blue uniform and gold-laced cap came forward and saluted. Lupin said to him, "All ready, Captain. Did you receive my telegram?"
"Yes, I got it."
"Is the Swallow ready?"
"Yes, monsieur."
"Come, Monsieur Sholmes." The Englishman looked around, saw a group of people on the terrace in front of a cafe, hesitated a moment, then realizing that before he could secure any assistance he would be seized, carried aboard, and placed in the bottom of the hold, he crossed the gangplank and followed Lupin into the captain's cabin. It was quite a large room, scrupulously clean, and presented a cheerful appearance with its varnished woodwork and polished brass. Lupin closed the door and addressed Sholmes abruptly and almost rudely, as he said, "Well, what do you know?" "Everything." "Everything? Come on, be precise." His voice contained no longer that polite if ironical tone which he had affected when speaking to the Englishman. Now his voice had the imperious tone of a master accustomed to command and accustomed to be obeyed, even by Herlock Sholmes. They measured each other by their looks, enemies now, open and implacable foes. Lupin spoke again, but in a milder tone. "I have grown weary of your pursuit, and do not intend to waste any more time in avoiding the traps you lay for me. I warn you that my treatment of you will depend on your reply. Now what do you know?" "Everything, monsieur." Arsène Lupin controlled his temper and said in a jerky manner, "I will tell you what you know. You know that, under the name of Maxime Bermond, I have improved 15 houses that were originally constructed by Monsieur D'Estaing." "Yes." "Of those 15 houses, you have seen 4. "Yes." "And you have a list of the other 11. "Yes." "You made that list at Monsieur D'Estaing's house that night, no doubt." "Yes." "And you have an idea that amongst those 11 houses there is one I have kept for the use of myself and my friends, and you have entrusted to Ganimard the task of finding my retreat. No. What does that signify? It signifies that I choose to act alone and do not want his help. Then I have nothing to fear since you're in my hands. You have nothing to fear as long as I remain in your hands. You mean that you will not remain? Yes. Arsène Lupin approached the Englishman and placing his hand on the latter's shoulder said, "Listen, monsieur. I am not in a humor to argue with you, and unfortunately for you, you are not in a position to choose. So let us finish our business. Very well. You are going to give me your word of honor that you will not try to escape from this boat until you arrive in English waters. I give you my word of honor that I shall escape if I have an opportunity," replied the indomitable Sholmes. "But, sapristi, you know quite well that at a word from me you would soon be rendered helpless. All these men would obey me blindly. At a sign from me they would place you in irons can be broken, and throw you overboard 10 miles from shore. I can swim." "I hadn't thought of that," said Lupin with a laugh. "Excuse me, master, and let us finish. You will agree that I must take the measures necessary to protect myself and my friends. Certainly, but they will be useless. And yet you do not wish me to take them." "It is your duty." "Very well, then." Lupin opened the door and called the captain and 2 sailors. The latter seized the Englishman, bound him hand and foot, and tied him to the captain's bunk. "That will do," said Lupin. "It was only on account of your obstinacy and the unusual gravity of the situation that I ventured to offer you this indignity." The sailors retired. Lupin said to the captain, "Let one of the crew remain here to look after Monsieur Sholmes, and you can give him as much of your own company as possible. Treat him with all due respect and consideration. He is not a prisoner, but a guest. What time have you, Captain?" "5 minutes after 2. Lupin consulted his watch, then looked at the clock that was attached to the wall of the cabin. 5 minutes past 2 is right. How long will it take you to reach Southampton?" 9 hours, easy going. Make it 11. You must not land there until after the departure of the midnight boat, which reaches Havre at 8 o'clock. Do you understand, Captain? Let me repeat, as it would be very dangerous for all of us to permit Monsieur to return to France by that boat, you must not reach Southampton before 1 o'clock in the morning." "I understand." "Au revoir, master. Next year, in this world, or in the next." "Until tomorrow," replied Sholmes. A few minutes later, Sholmes heard the automobile going away, and at the same time the steam puffed violently in the depths of the Swallow. The boat had started for England. About 3 o'clock, the vessel left the mouth of the river and plunged into the open sea. At that moment, Sholmes was lying on the captain's bunk, sound asleep. Next morning, it being the 10th and last day of the duel between Sholmes and Lupin, the Echo de France published this interesting bit of news. "Yesterday, a judgment of ejectment was entered in the case of Arsène Lupin against Herlock Sholmes, the English detective. Although signed at noon, the judgment was executed the same day. At 1 o'clock this morning, Sholmes was landed at Southampton." And that brings us to the close of Chapter 5. I'm going to take a quick break to get some water, and I will be right back. Make sure you guys also get something to drink. Hey, you there in chat. I see you. I'm tapping the sign right now. The one that says unshrimp yourself. Just kidding. Anyway, hello, welcome in. I just came back from a hydration break, and I'm gonna start chapter 6 of the story, so... Chapter 6, The Second Arrest of Arsène Lupin. Since 8 o'clock, a dozen moving vans had encumbered the Rue Crevaux between the Avenue des Bois de Boulogne and the Avenue Bugeaud. Monsieur Felix Davy was leaving the apartment in which he lived on the 4th floor of number 8, and Monsieur Dubreuil, who had united into a single apartment the 5th floor of the same house and the 5th floor of the 2 adjoining houses, was moving on the same day. A mere coincidence, since the gentlemen were unknown to each other. The vast collection of furniture regarding which so many foreign agents visited him every day. A circumstance which had been noticed by some of the neighbors but was not spoken of until later was this. None of the 12 vans bore the name and address of the owner, and none of the men accompanying them visited the neighboring wine shops. They worked so diligently that the furniture was all out by 11 o'clock. Nothing remained but those scraps of papers and rags that are always left behind in the corners of empty rooms. Monsieur Felix Davy, an elegant young man, dressed in the latest fashion, carried in his hand a walking stick, the weight of which indicated that its owner possessed extraordinary biceps. Monsieur Felix Davy walked calmly away and took a seat on a bench in the Avenue des Bois de Boulogne, facing the Rue Pergolese. Close to him, a woman dressed in a neat but inexpensive costume was reading a newspaper, whilst a child was playing with a shovel in a heap of sand. After a few minutes, Felix Davy spoke to the woman without turning his head.
Ganimard?
Went out at 9 o'clock this morning.
Where?
To police headquarters.
Alone?
Yes.
No telegram during the night?
No.
Do they suspect you in the house?
No. I do some little things for Madame Ganimard, and she tells me everything her husband does. I have been with her all morning.
Very well. Until further orders come here every day at 11 o'clock.
He rose and walked away in the direction of the Dauphine Gate, stopping at the Chinese pavilion, where he partook of a frugal repast consisting of 2 eggs with some fruit and vegetables. Then he returned to the Rue Crevaux and said to the concierge,
I will just glance through the rooms and then give you the keys.
He finished his inspection of the room that he had used as a library. Then he seized the end of a gas pipe which hung down the side of the chimney. This pipe was bent and a hole made in the elbow. To this hole he fitted a small instrument in the form of an ear trumpet and blew into it. A slight whistling sound came by way of reply. Placing the trumpet to his mouth, he said,
Anyone around, Dubreuil? No. May I come up? Yes.
He returned the pipe to its place, saying to himself,
How progressive we are. Our century abounds with little inventions which render life really charming and picturesque, and so amusing, especially when a person knows how to enjoy life as I do.
He turned one of the marble moldings of the mantel, and the entire half of the mantel moved, and the mirror above it glided in invisible grooves, disclosing an opening in the lower steps of a stairs built in the very body of the chimney, all very clean and complete. The stairs were constructed of polished metal and the walls of white tiles. He ascended the steps, and at the 5th floor there was the same opening in the chimney. Monsieur Dubreuil was waiting for him.
Have you finished in your rooms? Yes. Everything cleared out? Yes. And the people? Only the 3 men on guard. Very well. Come on.
They ascended to the upper floor by the same means, one after the other, and there found 3 men, one of whom was looking through the window.
Anything new?
Nothing, governor.
All quiet on the street?
Yes.
In 10 minutes I will be ready to leave. You will go also. But in the meantime, if you see the least suspicious movement in the street, warn me.
I have my finger on the alarm bell all the time.
Dubreuil, did you tell the moving men not to touch the wire of that bell? Certainly. It is working all right. That is all I want to know.
The 2 gentlemen then descended to the apartment of Felix Davy, and the latter, after adjusting the marble mantle, exclaimed joyfully,
Dubreuil, I should like to see the man who is able to discover all the ingenious devices, warning bells, networks of electric wires and acoustic tubes, invisible passages, moving floors, and hidden stairways. A real fairyland. What fame for Arsène Lupin. Fame I could well dispense with. It's a pity to be compelled to leave a place so well equipped and commence all over again. Dubreuil. And on a new model, of course, for it would never do to duplicate this. Curse Herlock Sholmes.
Has he returned to Paris?
How could he? There's only been one boat come from Southampton, and it left there at midnight. Only one train from Havre, leaving there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and due in Paris at 11:15. As he could not catch the midnight boat at Southampton, and the instructions to the captain on that point were explicit, he cannot reach France until this evening via Newhaven and Dieppe.
Do you think he will come back?
Yes, he never gives up. He will return to Paris, but it will be too late. We will be far away.
And Mademoiselle Distingue?
I am to see her in an hour.
At her house?
No. She will not return there for several days. But you, Dubreuil, you must hurry. The loading of our goods will take a long time, and you should be there to look after them.
Are you sure that we are not being watched?
By whom? I'm I'm not afraid of anyone but Sholmes.
Dubreuil retired. Felix Davy made a last tour of the apartment, picked up 2 or 3 torn letters, then, noticing a piece of chalk, he took it, and on the dark paper of the drawing room, drew a large frame and wrote within it the following: Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar, lived here for the 5 years at the beginning of the 20th century. This little pleasantry seemed to please him very much. He looked at it for a moment, whistling a lively air, then said to himself, "Now that I have placed myself in touch with the historians of future generations, I can go. You must hurry, Herlock Sholmes, as I shall leave my present abode in 3 minutes, and your defeat will be an accomplished feat. 2 minutes more. You're keeping me waiting, Monsieur Sholmes. 1 minute more. Are you not coming? Well then, I proclaim your downfall and my apotheosis. And now I make my escape. Farewell, kingdom of Arsène Lupin. I shall never see you again. Farewell to the 55 rooms of the 6 apartments over which I reigned. Farewell, my own royal bedchamber." His outburst of joy was interrupted by the sharp ringing of a bell, which stopped twice, started again, and then ceased. It was the alarm bell. What was wrong? What unforeseen danger? Ganimard? No, that wasn't possible. He was on the point of returning to his library and making his escape. But first he went to the window. There was no one in the street. Was the enemy already in the house? He listened and thought he could discern certain confused sounds. He hesitated no longer. He ran to his library, and as he crossed the threshold, he heard the noise of a key being inserted into the lock of the vestibule door. "The deuce?" he murmured. "I have no time to lose. The house may be surrounded. The servants' stairway. Impossible. Fortunately, there's the chimney." He pushed the molding. It did not move. He made a greater effort. Still, it refused to move. At the same time, he had the impression that the door below opened and that he could hear footsteps. "Good God!" he cried. "I'm lost if this cursed mechanism—" He pushed with all his strength. Nothing moved. Nothing. By some incredible accident, by some evil stroke of fortune, the mechanism, which had worked only a few moments ago, would not work now. He was furious. The block of marble remained immovable. He uttered frightful imprecations on the senseless stone. Was his escape to be prevented by that stupid obstacle? He struck the marble wildly, madly. He hammered it. He cursed it. "Ah, what's the matter, Monsieur Lupin? You seem to be displeased about something." Lupin turned around. Herlock Sholmes stood before him. Herlock Sholmes. Lupin gazed at him with squinting eyes, as if his sight were defective and misleading. Herlock Sholmes in Paris. Herlock Sholmes, whom he had shipped to England only the day before as a dangerous person, now stood before him, free and victorious. Such a thing was nothing less than a miracle. It was contrary to all natural laws. It was the culmination of all that is illogical and abnormal. Herlock Sholmes, here, before his face. And when the Englishman spoke, his words were tinged with that keen sarcasm and mocking politeness with which his adversary had so often lashed him. He said, "Monsieur Lupin, In the first place, I have the honor to inform you that at this time and place I blot from my memory forever all thoughts of the miserable night that you forced me to endure in the house of Baron d'Artrec, of the injury done to my friend Wilson, of my abduction in the automobile, and of the voyage I took yesterday under your orders, bound to a very uncomfortable couch. But the joy of this moment effaces all those bitter memories. I forgive everything. I forget everything. I wipe out the debt. I am paid. And royally paid. Lupin made no reply, so the Englishman continued. Don't you think so yourself? He appeared to insist as if demanding an acquiescence as a sort of receipt in regard to the part. After a moment's reflection, during which the Englishman felt he was scrutinized to the very depths of his soul, Lupin declared, I presume, monsieur, that your conduct is based upon serious motives? Very serious. The fact that you have escaped from my captain and his crew is only a secondary incident of our struggle. But the fact that you are here before me alone, understand, alone, face to face with Arsène Lupin, leads me to think that your revenge is as complete as possible. As complete as possible. This house, surrounded. The two adjoining houses, surrounded. The apartment above this. The 3 apartments on the 5th floor that were formerly occupied by Monsieur Dubreuil are surrounded. So that you are captured, Monsieur Lupin. Absolutely captured. The feelings that Sholmes had experienced during his trip in the automobile were now suffered by Lupin. The same concentrated fury. The same revolt. And also, let us admit, the same loyalty of submission to force of circumstances. Equally brave in victory or defeat. Our accounts are squared, monsieur, said Lupin frankly. The Englishman was pleased with that confession. After a short silence, Lupin, now quite self-possessed, said smiling, And I am not sorry. It becomes monotonous to win all the time. Yesterday, I had only to stretch out my hand to finish you forever. Today, I belong to you. The game is yours. Lupin laughed heartily and then continued. At last, the gallery will be entertained. Lupin in prison. How will he get out? In prison. What an adventure! Sholmes, life is just one damn thing after another. He pressed his closed hands to his temples as if to suppress the tumultuous joy that surged within him. And his actions indicated he was moved by an uncontrollable mirth. At last, when he had recovered his self-possession, he approached the detective and said, And now, what are we waiting for? What am I waiting for? Yes, Ganimard is here with his men. Why don't they come in? I asked him not to. And he consented? I accepted his services on condition that he would be guided by me. Besides, he thinks that Felix Davy is only an accomplice of Arsène Lupin. Then I will repeat my question in another form. Why did you come in alone? Because I wished to speak to you alone. Ah, you have something to say to me.
That idea seemed to please Lupin immensely. There are certain circumstances in which words are preferable to deeds. Monsieur Sholmes, I am sorry. I cannot offer you an easy chair. How would you like that broken box? Or perhaps you would prefer the window ledge? I'm sure a glass of beer would be welcome. Light or dark, but sit down, please.
Thank you. We can talk as well standing up.
Very well. Proceed.
I will be brief. The object of my sojourn in France was not to accomplish your arrest. If I've been led to pursue you, it was because I saw no other way to achieve my real object.
Which was?
To recover the blue diamond.
The blue diamond?
Certainly, since the one found in Herr Bleichen's tooth powder was only an imitation.
Quite right, the genuine diamond was taken by the blonde lady. I made an exact duplicate of it, and then, as I had designs on other jewels belonging to the Countess, and as the Count saw Herr Bleichen was already under suspicion, the aforesaid blonde lady, in order to avert suspicion, slipped the false stone into the aforesaid Count's luggage.
While you kept the genuine diamond.
Of course.
That diamond, I want it.
I'm very sorry, but it is impossible.
I have promised it to the Countess de Crozon. I must have it.
How will you get it, since it is in my possession?
That is precisely the reason. Because it is in your possession.
Oh, I'm to give it to you?
Yes.
Voluntarily.
I will buy it.
Ha! Exclaimed Lupin in an access of mirth. You are certainly an Englishman. You treat this as a matter of business.
It is a matter of business.
Well, what's your offer?
The liberty of Mademoiselle D'Estaing.
Her liberty? I didn't know she was under arrest.
I will give Monsieur Ganimard the necessary information. When deprived of your protection, she can readily be taken.
Lupin laughed again and said, "Ha ha! My dear monsieur, you are offering me something you do not possess. Mademoiselle D'Estaing is in a place of safety and has nothing to fear. You must make me another offer."
The Englishman hesitated, visibly embarrassed and vexed. Then, placing his hand on the shoulder of his adversary, he said, "And if I should propose to you my liberty?
No.
But I can leave the room to consult with Ganimard."
"And leave me alone?"
"Yes."
"Aha! Mon Dieu, what good would that be? The cursed mechanism will not work," said Lupin, at the same time savagely pushing the molding of the mantle. He stifled a cry of surprise. This time, fortune favored him. The block of marble moved. It was his salvation, his hope of escape. In that event, why submit to the conditions imposed by Holmes? He paced up and down the room as if he was considering his reply. Then, in his turn, he placed his hand on the shoulder of his adversary and said,
"All things considered, Monsieur Sholmes, I prefer to do my own business in my own way. But, no, I don't require anyone's assistance. When Ganimard gets his hand on you, it will be all over. You can't escape from them. Who knows? Come, that is foolish. Every door and window is guarded. Except one. Which? The one I choose. Mere words. Your arrest is as good as made." "Oh, no, not at all." "Well?" "I shall keep the blue diamond." Sholmes looked at his watch and said, "It is now 10 minutes to 3. At 3 o'clock I shall call Ganimard." "Well then, we have 10 minutes to chat. And, to satisfy my curiosity, Monsieur Sholmes, I should like to know how you procured my address and my name of Felix Davy."
Although his adversary's easy manner caused Sholmes some anxiety, he was willing to give Lupin the desired information since it reflected credit on his professional astuteness. So he replied, "Your address? I got it from the blonde lady. Clotilde? Herself? Do you remember yesterday morning when I wished to take her away in the automobile? She telephoned to her dressmaker." Well? Well, I understood later that you were the dressmaker. And last night on the boat, by exercising my memory, and my memory is something I have good reason to be proud of, I was able to recollect the last two figures of your telephone number, 73. Then, as I possessed a list of the houses you had improved, it was an easy matter on my arrival in Paris at 11 o'clock this morning to search in the telephone directory and find there the name and address of Felix Davy. Having obtained that information, I asked the aid of Monsieur Ganimard. "Admirable! I congratulate you. But how did you manage to catch the 8 o'clock train at Havre? How did you escape from the Swallow?" "I did not escape. But you ordered the captain not to reach Southampton before 1 o'clock. He landed me there at midnight. I was able to catch the 12 o'clock boat for Havre." "Did the captain betray me? I can't believe it." "No, he did not betray you." "Well, what then?" "It was his watch." "His watch?" "Yes, I put it ahead 1 hour." "How?" "In the usual way, by turning the hands. We were sitting side by side, talking, and I was telling him some funny stories. Why, he never saw me do it." "Bravo! Very clever trick, I shall not forget it. But the clock that was hanging on the wall of the cabin?" "Ah, the clock was a more difficult matter, as my feet were tied. But the sailor who guarded me during his captain's absence was kind enough to turn the hands for me." "He? Nonsense! He wouldn't do it." "Oh, but he didn't know the importance of his act. I told him I must catch the first train for London at any price, and he allowed himself to be persuaded by means of a slight gift, which the excellent fellow, loyal and true to his master, intends to send to you." "What was it?" "A mere trifle." "But what?" "The blue diamond." "The blue diamond?" "Yes, the false stone that you substituted for the Countess's diamond. She gave it to me." There was a sudden explosion of violent laughter. Lupin laughed until the tears started in his eyes. "But it is funny. My false diamond palmed off on my innocent sailor, and the captain's watch, and the hands of the clock." Sholmes felt that the duel between him and Lupin was keener than ever. His marvelous instinct warned him that behind his adversary's display of mirth, there was a shrewd intellect debating the ways and means to escape. Gradually, Lupin approached the Englishman, who recoiled and unconsciously slipped his hand into his watch pocket. "It is 3 o'clock, Monsieur Lupin." "3 o'clock already? What a pity. We were enjoying our chat so much." "I am waiting for your answer." "My answer? Mon Dieu, but you are particular. And so, this is the last move in our little game. And the stake is my liberty." "Or the blue diamond." "Very well. It's your play. What are you going to do?" "I play the king," said Sholmes as he fired his revolver. "And I the ace," replied Lupin as he struck at Sholmes with his fist. Sholmes had fired into the air as a signal to Ganimard, whose assistance he required, But Lupin's fist had caught Sholmes in the stomach and caused him to double up with pain. Lupin rushed to the fireplace and set the marble slab in motion. Too late. The door opened. "Surrender, Lupin, or I fire!" Ganimard, doubtless stationed closer than Lupin had thought. Ganimard was there, with his revolver turned on Lupin. And behind Ganimard there were 20 men, strong and ruthless fellows who would beat him like a dog at the least sign of resistance. "Hands down. I surrender," said Lupin calmly, and he folded his arms across his breast. Everyone was amazed. In the room, divested of its furniture and hangings, Arsène Lupin's words sounded like an echo. "I surrender." It seemed incredible. No one would have been astonished if he had suddenly vanished through a trap, or if a section of the wall had rolled away and allowed him to escape. But he surrendered. Ganimard advanced nervously, and with all the gravity that the importance of the occasion demanded, placed his hand on the shoulder of his adversary, and had the infinite pleasure of saying, "I arrest you, Arsène Lupin." Said Lupin. "You make me shiver, my dear Ganimard. What a lugubrious face. One would imagine you were speaking over the grave of a friend. For heaven's sake, don't assume such a funereal air." "I arrest you. Don't let that worry you. In the name of the law, of which he is a well-deserving pillar, Ganimard, the celebrated Parisian detective, arrests the wicked Arsène Lupin. An historic event, of which you will appreciate the true importance, and it is the second time it has happened. Bravo, Ganimard. You are sure of advancement in your chosen profession." And he held out his wrists for the handcuffs. Ganimard adjusted them in a most solemn manner. The numerous policemen, despite their customary presumption and the bitterness of their feelings toward Lupin, conducted themselves with becoming modesty, astonished at being permitted to gaze upon that mysterious, intangible creature. "My poor Lupin," sighed our hero. "What would your aristocratic friends say if they should see you in this humiliating position?" He pulled his wrists apart with all his strength. The veins in his forehead expanded. The links of the chain cut into his flesh. The chain fell off, broken. "Another, comrades. That one was useless." They placed 2 on him this time. "Quite right," he said. "You cannot be too careful." Then, counting the detectives and policemen, he said, "How many are you, my friends? 25? 30? That's too many. I can't do anything." If there'd been only 15. There was something fascinating about Lupin. It was the fascination of the great actor who plays his role with spirit and understanding, combined with assurance and ease. Sholmes regarded him as one might regard a beautiful painting with a due appreciation of all its perfection in coloring and technique. And he really thought that it was an equal struggle between those 30 men on one side, armed as they were with all the strength and majesty of the law, and on the other side, that solitary individual, unarmed and handcuffed. Yes, the two sides were well matched. "Well, master," said Lupin to the Englishman, "this is your work. Thanks to you, Lupin is going to rot on the damp straw of a dungeon. Confess that your conscience pricks you a little and that your soul is filled with remorse." In spite of himself, Sholmes shrugged his shoulders as if to say, "It's your own fault." "Never, never," exclaimed Lupin. "Give you the blue diamond? Huh, no, it has cost me too much trouble. I intend to keep it. On my occasion of my first visit to you in London, which will probably be next month, I'll tell you my reasons." "But will you be in London next month? Or do you prefer Vienna?" or St. Petersburg. Then Lupin received a surprise. A bell commenced to ring. It was not the alarm bell, but the bell of the telephone, which was located between the two windows of the room and had not yet been removed. The telephone. Ah, who could it be? Who was about to fall into this unfortunate trap? Arsène Lupin exhibited an access of rage against the unlucky instrument, as if he would like to break it into 1,000 pieces, and thus stifle the mysterious voice that was calling for him. But it was Ganimard who took down the receiver and said, "Hello? Hello? Number 648.73. Yes, this is it." Then Sholmes stepped up and with an air of authority pushed Ganimard aside, took the receiver, and covered the transmitter with his handkerchief in order to obscure the tone of his voice. At that moment he glanced toward Lupin, and the look which they exchanged indicated that the same idea had occurred to each of them, and that they foresaw the ultimate result of that theory. It was the blonde lady who was telephoning. She wished to telephone to Felix Davy, or rather, to Maxime Bermond, and it was to Sholmes she was about to speak. The Englishman said, "Hello? Hello?" Then after a silence he said, "Yes, it is I, Maxime." The drama had commenced and was progressing with tragic precision. Lupin, the irrepressible and nonchalant Lupin, did not attempt to conceal his anxiety, and he strained every nerve in a desire to hear, or at least divine, the purport of the conversation, and Sholmes continued in reply to the mysterious voice. "Hello? Hello? Yes, everything has been moved, and I am just ready to leave here and meet you as we agreed." "Where?" "Where you are now. Don't believe he's here yet." Sholmes stopped, seeking for words. It was clear he was trying to question the girl without betraying himself, and that he was ignorant of her whereabouts. Moreover, Ganimard's presence seemed to embarrass him. If some miracle would only interrupt that cursed conversation. Lupin prayed for it with all his strength, with all the intensity of his incited nerves. After a momentary pause, Sholmes continued, "Hello? Hello? Do you hear me?" "Can't hear you very well. Can scarcely make out what you say. Are you listening? Well, I think you had better return home. No danger now. But he is in England. I have received a telegram from Southampton announcing his arrival." The sarcasm of those words! Sholmes uttered them with an inexpressible comfort, and he added, "Very well. Don't lose any time. I will meet you there." He hung up the receiver. "Monsieur Ganimard, can you furnish me with 3 men?" "For the blonde lady, eh?" "Yes." "You know who she is and where she is?" "Yes." "Good. That settles Monsieur Lupin. Folenfant, take 2 men and go with Monsieur Sholmes." The Englishman departed, accompanied by the 3 men. The game was ended. The blonde lady was also about to fall into the hands of the Englishman. Thanks to his commendable persistence and to a combination of fortuitous circumstance, the battle had resulted in a victory for the detective and irreparable disaster for Lupin. "Monsieur Sholmes!" The Englishman stopped. "Monsieur Lupin?" Lupin was clearly shattered by this final blow. His forehead was marked by deep wrinkles. He was sullen and dejected. However, he pulled himself together, and notwithstanding his defeat, he exclaimed in a cheerful tone, "You will concede that fate has been against me. A few minutes ago it prevented my escape through that chimney and delivered me into your hands. Now, by means of the telephone, it presents you with the blonde lady. I submit to its decrees." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I am ready to reopen our negotiation." Sholmes took Ganimard aside and asked, in a manner that did not permit a reply, the authority to exchange a few words with the prisoner. Then he approached Lupin and said in a sharp, nervous tone, "What do you want?" "Mademoiselle D'Estaing's liberty." "You know the price." "Yes." "And you accept?" "Yes." "I accept your terms." Ah, said the Englishman in surprise. But you refused for yourself. Yes, I can look out for myself, Monsieur Sholmes, but now the question concerns a young woman, and a woman I love. In France, understand, we have very decided ideas about such things, and Lupin has the same feelings as other people. He spoke with simplicity and candor. Sholmes replied by an almost imperceptible inclination of his head and murmured, "Very well. The blue diamond. Take my cane there at the end of the mantle. Press on the head of the cane with one hand, and with the other, turn the iron ferrule at the bottom." Holmes took the cane and followed the directions. As he did so, the head of the cane divided and disclosed a cavity which contained a small ball of wax, which in turn enclosed the diamond. He examined it. It was the blue diamond. Monsieur Lupin, Mademoiselle D'Estaing is free. Is her future safety assured? Has she nothing to fear from you? Neither from me or anyone else. How can you manage it? Quite easily. I have forgotten her name and address. Thank you. And au revoir. For I will see you again sometime, Monsieur Sholmes. I have no doubt of it. Then followed an animated conversation between Sholmes and Ganimard, which was abruptly terminated by the Englishman, who said, "I am very sorry, Monsieur Ganimard, that we cannot agree on that point, but I have no time to waste trying to convince you. I leave for England within an hour." "But the blonde lady?" "I do not know such a person. And yet a moment ago—" "You must take the affair as it stands. I have delivered Arsène Lupin into your hands. Here is the blue diamond, which you will have the pleasure of returning to the Countess de Crozon. What more do you want?" "The blonde lady." "Then find her." Sholmes pulled his cap down over his forehead and walked rapidly away like a man who is accustomed to go as soon as his business is finished. "Bon voyage, monsieur," cried Lupin, "and believe me, I shall never forget the friendly way in which our little business affairs have been arranged. My regards to Monsieur Wilson." Not receiving any reply, Lupin added sneeringly, "That is what is called taking British leave. Their insular dignity lacks the flower of courtesy by which we are distinguished. Consider for a moment, Ganimard, what a charming exit a Frenchman would have made under similar circumstances. With what exquisite courtesy he would have masked his triumph. But, God bless me, Ganimard, what are you doing? Making a search? Come, what's the use? There's nothing left. Not even a scrap of paper. I assure you my archives are in a safe place." "I am not sure of that," replied Ganimard. "I must search everything." Lupin submitted to the operation. Held by 2 detectives and surrounded by the others, he patiently endured the proceedings for 20 minutes. Then he said, "Hurry up, Ganimard, and finish." "You are in a hurry." "Of course I am. An important appointment." "At the police station?" "No, in the city." "At what time?" 2 o'clock. "It is 3 o'clock now." "Just so. I'll be late. And punctuality is one of my virtues." "Well, give me 5 minutes." "Not a second more," said Lupin. "I am doing my best to expedite—" "Oh, don't talk so much. Still searching that cupboard. It is empty." "Here are some letters." "Old invoices, I presume." "No, a packet tied with a ribbon." "A red ribbon? Oh, Ganimard, for God's sake, don't untie it!" "From a woman?" "Yes, a woman of the world. The best in the world." "Her name?" "Madame Ganimard." Very funny, exclaimed the detective. At that moment, the men who had been sent to search the other rooms returned and announced their failure to find anything. Lupin laughed and said, Parbleu! Did you expect to find my visiting list or evidence of business relations with the Emperor of Germany? But I can tell you what you should investigate, Ganimard. All the little mysteries of this apartment. For instance, that gas pipe is a speaking tube. That chimney contains a stairway. That wall is hollow. And the marvelous system of bells. Ganimard, just press that button. Ganimard obeyed. Did you hear anything? Asked Lupin. No. Neither did I. And yet, you notified my aeronaut to prepare the dirigible balloon which will soon carry us into the clouds. Come, said Ganimard, who had completed his search. We've had enough nonsense. Let's be off. He started away, followed by his men. Lupin did not move. His guardians pushed him in vain. Well, said Ganimard, do you refuse to go? Not at all, but it depends. On what? Where you want to take me? To the station house, of course. Then I refuse to go. I have no business there. Are you crazy? Did I not tell you I had an important appointment? Lupin? Why, Ganimard, I have an appointment with the blonde lady, and do you suppose I would be so discourteous as to cause her a moment's anxiety? That would be very ungentlemanly. Lupin, said the detective, who was becoming annoyed by this persiflage. I have been very patient with you, but I will endure no more. Follow me. Impossible. I have an appointment, and I shall keep it. For the last time, follow me. Impossible. At a sign from Ganimard, two men seized Lupin by the arms, but they released him at once, uttering cries of pain. Lupin had thrust 2 long needles into them. The other men now rushed at Lupin with cries of rage and hatred, eager to avenge their comrades and to avenge themselves of the many affronts he had heaped upon them, and now they struck and beat him to their heart's desire. A violent blow on the temple felled Lupin to the floor. If you hurt him, you will answer to me, growled Ganimard in a rage. He leaned over Lupin to ascertain his condition. Then, learning that he was breathing freely, Ganimard ordered his men to carry the prisoner by the head and feet, while he himself supported the body. Go, gently now. Don't jolt him. The brutes would have killed him. Well, Lupin, how goes it? None too well, Ganimard. You let them knock me out. It was your own fault. You were so obstinate, replied Ganimard. But I hope they didn't hurt you. They had left the apartment and were now on the landing. Lupin groaned and stammered. Ganimard, the elevator. They're breaking my bones. A good idea, an excellent idea, replied Ganimard. Besides, the stairway is too narrow. He summoned the elevator. They placed Lupin on the seat with the greatest care. Ganimard took his place beside him and said to his men, Go down the stairs away from me below. Understand? Ganimard closed the door of the elevator. Suddenly the elevator shot upward like a balloon released from its cable. Lupin burst into a fit of sardonic laughter. Good God! Cried Ganimard as he made a frantic search in the dark for the button of descent. Having found it, he cried, The 5th floor! Watch the door of the 5th floor! His assistants clambered up the stairs, 2 and 3 steps at a time. But this strange circumstance happened. The elevator seemed to break through the ceiling of the last floor, disappeared from the sight of Ganimard's assistants, suddenly made its appearance on the upper floor, the servants' floor, and stopped. 3 men were there waiting for it. They opened the door. 2 of them seized Ganimard, who, astonished at the sudden attack, scarcely made any defense. The other man carried off Lupin. I warned you, Ganimard, about the dirigible balloon. Another time, don't be so tender-hearted. And moreover, remember that Arsène Lupin doesn't allow himself to be struck and knocked down without sufficient reason. Adieu. The door of the elevator was already closed on Ganimard, and the machine began to descend, and it all happened so quickly that the old detective reached the ground floor as soon as his assistants. Without exchanging a word, they crossed the court and ascended the servants' stairway, which was the only way to reach the servants' floor through which the escape had been made. A long corridor with several turns and bordered with little numbered rooms led to a door that was not locked. On the other side of this door, and therefore in another house, there was another corridor with similar turns and similar rooms, and at the end of it a servant's stairway. Ganimard descended it, crossed a court and a vestibule, and found himself in the Rue Picot. Then he understood the situation. The two houses, built the entire depth of the lots, touched at the rear, while the fronts of the houses faced upon two streets that ran parallel to each other at a distance of more than 60 meters apart. He found the concierge and, showing his card, inquired,
"Did 4 men pass here just now?"
"Yes, the 2 servants from the 4th and 5th floors with 2 friends."
"Who lives on the 4th and 5th floors?"
2 men named Favel and their cousins, whose name is Provost. They moved today, leaving the 2 servants who went away just now. Thought Ganimard.
What a grand opportunity we've missed. The entire band lived in these houses.
And he sank down on a chair in despair. 40 minutes later, 2 gentlemen were driven up to the station of the Northern Railway and hurried to the Calais Express, followed by a porter who carried their valises. One of them had his arm in a sling, and the pallor of his face denoted some illness. The other man was in a jovial mood. "We must hurry, Wilson, or we'll miss the train." "Ah, Wilson, I shall never forget these 10 days."
"Neither will I."
It was a great struggle.
"Superb."
A few repulses here and there.
"Of no consequence."
And at last, victory all along the line. Lupin arrested. The blue diamond recovered.
My arm broken.
What does a broken arm count for in such a victory as that?
Especially when it is my arm.
Ah, yes, don't you remember, Wilson, that it was at the very time you were in the pharmacy, suffering like a hero, that I discovered the clue to the whole mystery?
How lucky.
The doors of the carriages were being closed.
All aboard. Hurry up, gentlemen.
The porter climbed into an empty compartment and placed their valises in the rack, whilst Sholmes assisted the unfortunate Wilson. "What's the matter, Wilson? You're not done up, are you? Come, pull your nerves together."
My nerves are all right.
"Well, what is it then?"
I have only one hand.
"What of it?" exclaimed Sholmes cheerfully. "You're not the only one who has had a broken arm. Cheer up." Sholmes handed the porter a piece of 50 centimes.
Thank you, monsieur.
"Thank you, Monsieur Sholmes," said the porter. The Englishman looked at him. It was Arsène Lupin. You, he stammered, absolutely astounded, and Wilson brandished his sound arm in the manner of a man who demonstrates a fact as he said, You, but you were arrested. Sholmes told me so when he left you, Ganimard, and 30 men had you in charge." Lupin folded his arms and said, with an air of indignation, "Did you suppose I would let you go away without bidding you adieu? After the very friendly relations that have always existed between us, that would be discourteous and ungrateful on my part." The train whistled. Lupin continued, "I beg your pardon, but have you everything you need? Tobacco and matches? Yes. And the evening papers? You will find in them an account of my arrest, your last exploit, Monsieur Sholmes, and now, au revoir. Am delighted to have made your acquaintance, and if ever I can be of any service to you, I shall be only too happy." He leapt to the platform and closed the door. "Adieu," he repeated, waving his handkerchief. "Adieu. I shall write to you. You'll write also, eh? And your arm broken, Wilson, I am truly sorry. I shall expect to hear from both of you. A postal card, now and then. Simply address Lupin, Paris. That is sufficient. Adieu. See you soon."
thus ends Chapter 6. Next time, which will be this Saturday, we will finish the story with chapters 7 and 8. So, what's the scorecard say right now? Because right now, I'm thinking it's 1-1. Because Arsène Lupin definitely won the first round. And then Herlock won. It's not Herlock's fault that Arsène escaped, so I'm still counting that as Herlock's victory and then Ganimard's defeat. Ganimard fumbled hard. So I'm gonna say it's actually, if we're being honest, Herlock was on the back foot of this like a lot of the time. I'm gonna say that like technically, no, okay. Lupin definitely won the first one, and then he thought he won the second one, and then Herlock turned it around and won. So yeah, it's 1-1 right now. So these last two chapters are either going to be the portion of the story where they team up and, you know, in traditional crossover fashion, team up against something else, or we're going to have a tiebreaker, or it'll be 1-1, wherein it's 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw for the both of them. Team up against evil Ganimard. He gets so frustrated at being embarrassed, he like takes on some supernatural power and no way, I think I'm starting to mix my stories. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us here tonight. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for listening. It's been such a joy to read for you guys. I know this is just the second story that I've read, but it really does make me happy to just kind of do this and sort of be background noise for whatever you're doing with your day. Take a couple of hours of your time. My next scheduled stream is going to be this Friday, August 1st. We will be playing Uma Musume Pretty Derby, and I will be practicing my voice acting. So I'm going to pick a horse, and we're going to go through her story career mode, and I'm going to voice act as much as I can of it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. It's a little bit of voice acting practice and a little bit of just, you know, chill, cozy gaming. And then on Saturday, August 2nd, I will be finishing up Arsène Lupin versus Herlock Sholmes. So we will do the last 2 chapters, and then after that, probably next week, we're just going to dive into our next story, which is going to be an Agatha Christie novel, another famous mystery writer. So that's going to be very exciting, very fun. And I am currently in the process of scripting another special surprise. So with any luck, I will be uploading that soonish. If not by this weekend, then early next week. But fingers crossed I get it done and I can just put it up there. So, if you liked my previous little lore drop video and partial ASMR, then yeah. That's gonna do it for us here tonight. Thank you again for being here, all my Rainiacs and my Langsters.
And I will see you next time. So, yeah. Make sure you guys eat well, stay hydrated, get lots of good rest, take great care of yourselves, and as always, unshrimp yourselves. Have a radiant rest of your night. Take care, everybody. Bye.